Hi, everybody. Welcome to Thursday's lecture. By now, you have submitted your documentary news story, and I'm really excited to dive into those to see kind of where you have decided to go based on your collection of data that you arranged in order to come up with these more attenuated questions that we have been referring to over the course of the week. So, that documentary news story is a project that enables you to rely on these already pre-established modalities of narrative and information arrangement as a means for you to apply it to the subject of your interest. And this had the goal of having you kind of take a step back and maintain an objective distance of the information so that you could somehow derive some really good, specific, nuanced questions that can begin the next phase of your research project. And then the types of claims exercise was there specifically to help maybe think about ways of asking the questions that you want to answer in different ways than perhaps you would intuitively apply to your subject matter. And so the goal there is to just amass the right kinds of questions to enter into this next phase, which is really getting into the nitty gritty and is exemplified by the next assignment in our class, namely the annotated bibliography. I know many of you have performed annotated bibliographies in the past, perhaps for high school. And I am here to tell you that they should not be busy work. But unfortunately, a lot of times, the way that they are assigned, the way they are communicated, does seem like busy work. And what we want to do is demystify and challenge that notion. Because what annotated bibliographies do is allow the researcher to see what other arguments are out there surrounding their topic so that they can be in conversation with them. It is not meant to be a summary of an argument or an article. In fact, most of it should be spent examining how the arguments are being made by others, and then the writer or the researcher kind of positioning themselves in conversation with those other ideas so that then they can begin to chisel away at their own resolve around the question that they're answering. So think of it like an annotated bibliography is sitting around with a group of friends and you ask a question on a controversial topic and you listen to the myriad answers that are provided that engage the entire spectrum of the way that one can think about these. And you're sitting there considering all of their arguments. But then what you're truly doing in that moment is examining how they're making the argument. What facts are they utilizing? Is it more emotionally based? Or is it based on evidence? Is it biased because of their particular upbringing or where they're from? Or is it based on some critical distancing and evaluation? And you kind of lean into those kinds of conversations, don't you? And you go like, what's really making them think that? And so that's what we want to do with an annotated bibliography. We are looking under the hood of various arguments surrounding our topic of interest. And we're not only examining the efficacy of the argument that's made, but we're thinking about it in terms of the way we shape our own development of our argument. And since research is not about proving something right that you believe, It's about listening to everything that's out there and assembling what you think is the best answer to your question. Then the annotated bibliography becomes a really important step in being incredibly critical and diligent in the various arguments that are out there surrounding a topic that you're interested in coming up with an honest, authentic answer to. And that is what we want to do with our annotated bibliography. So I asked you to read the Ramage article, which I know is rather sawdusty, but it presents a whole series of questions that you should be thinking about as you examine an argumentative article. And what I've done is I've cliff noted that, and I've attached it to this video lecture. Just some things to keep in mind around kairos, or the timeliness of an article, the context, the persuasive techniques. So I have kind of a list for you in this lecture in written form that you can reference. But when it comes down to the annotated bibliography itself, this is what you need to do for it. You want to select 4 argumentative articles. No informational articles here, y'all. Argumentative, that have a very clear argument in mind. And you want to try to represent a broad range of perspectives. Maybe one or two that are more in alignment with your own predilection, but then certainly ones that are more qualifying of your own perspective and certainly oppositional to your own perspective. So think about it like a spectrum, because you want to all be debating in this, around this hypothetical table. And the more varied these arguments are, the more you're going to get out of this experience. Now, keep in mind that an argumentative article does not mean that the writer is slinging bias. In fact, the best kind of argumentative article is one where it appears that the writer is arranging evidence in such a way to make their point clear without necessarily betraying their own feelings about the subject. So yes, arguments, of course, are trying to persuade on a particular point. But being biased in an argument is not synonymous. Bias typically is something where the writer's ideology is leaking out, so to speak, into the article, rather than them presenting it in a professional way where they look to be arranging evidence in order to make a clear, persuasive point. They used charged language. They utilize kind of judgment within their arrangement of the information. That is what bias is. So no, an argumentative article does not necessarily equate to a biased article. Okay? Keep that in mind. What you want to do is you want to find 4 that you think are really interesting in the way that they present themselves, and you want to look under the hood. And so I have the annotated bibliography prompt for you, which kind of clearly delineates the 3 primary kind of goals of what an annotation is all about. The first one is a very, 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 very brief summary of the argument. All you need to do is articulate what the argument is, and to make sure that we understand how you understand the reading of the article, okay? That should be very short. It's succinct, and it's there just so that the reader, namely me or anyone else who would read your annotations, could understand what the article is trying to communicate. So basically, you're communicating the enthymeme and how they go about trying to make that enthymeme persuasive, period. Cool? The second and the third parts are the ones that you want to put extra special attention to. The second one is more the rhetorical analysis. How are they making their argument? Are they betraying bias? What is their perspective? These are the questions that I've included in this lecture in the written form following the video lecture itself. Okay? Who is the intended audience? What is the writer's purpose? These kinds of questions, yeah? So that you can, again, look under the hood of the argument and see what kind of engine, what kind of persuasive engine is running. You want to give quite a bit of your annotation space for that, okay? And then third, and don't ignore this one either, this one's really important as well, is what this argument, what this article is making you think about. How do you negotiate this author's argument with your own currently? How will you use this source information? What ideas does it make you think about? Be in conversation with the argument. Where are you feeling skeptical? Where are you feeling convinced? What does it make you want to research further? What did it open up in you that you hadn't considered prior? What seems to be kind of a salient and recurring idea that comes up in the arguments in somehow a positionality with your own, okay? So you're being in conversation. So each of these should be roughly 200 words, yeah? That's a roughly. I mean, basically, use it to your advantage. You are engaging in each of these arguments. You are trying to understand how they're making the persuasion, what they utilize, what considerations they make, and then you are in a conversation with them. This is to begin to shape your own perspective that will eventually become the argumentative focus that you utilize for the development of your own paper. Yeah? So you want to be comprehensive about this because it's really going to help you. As soon as you start to think that this is busy work, slap yourself in the face and understand that it's actually working to develop your perspective. And that ultimately is what we are trying to do with these, or with this project overall, right? It's to discover. It's to truly and authentically answer the question that you are trying to answer. And so this is the next step in getting there. And in fact, this is the very first sophisticated step to getting there because you're engaging in arguments that are out there around your topic. So that's what we're doing for this week. If you have any questions, challenges, remember that I have Zoom drop-in between 11 and 2 o'clock, and you can drop in at any time and ask me questions on Friday, or you can email me. I know many of you have set up independent conferences just to kind of go through certain questions that you have. And also note that soon, week 6, so less than 2 weeks from now, we're going to be setting up required one-on-one conferences to begin talking about how our research is going, what's happening. So let's make sure that we're in touch with one another because I'm really excited about these projects. I'm looking forward to reading those documentary news stories and beginning or listening to them and providing you feedback on some of the ideas that you have. Good luck with this annotation and have a wonderful weekend, y'all. Take care.